I'm from Seattle. There's a joke that like there's no tops in Seattle.
Feminine gays that are out there and they don't care who sees it. And I feel like it's like for men that are growing up in rural America that are gay.
Myself included sometimes struggle with, coping with being gay still. Like it's that accepted that I was gay but was going to keep it under wraps because
As to what was like the sparking moment for you to be like, you know what, I'm just going to live my truth and come out and just like publicly be gay. Do you feel like, looks matter more in gay relationships than in straight ones? All right, so this is my friend Connor. We worked together a year ago or so, and Connor got absolutely shredded, which was awesome to see. How much weight did you actually lose, Connor, when we were working together?
yeah, I think I lost like in the realm of 30 pounds, like got down really lean, and then we actually worked on like building back up muscle mass at that point. And yeah, we were together for a full calendar year, actually longer than that. I think probably like a year and like 2 months or something like that. And then I went out on my own. But yeah, I think at the peak lost about 30 pounds, and then we were working on gaining muscle back. So
That's so awesome. So yeah, and today I just want to have a conversation about kind of the like gay standard of being in shape and like what you've experienced in that transition and some like what your thoughts are in that. And then also how that relates to like straight standards as well, or like the straight culture and kind of how the differences and some of the similarities go. So for you, what do you feel like? Did you notice a difference when you got in shape with dating, and what was that like for you?
yeah, I mean, I think just from my perspective, there does seem to be like a magnifying glass under the gay male community in particular as it relates to beauty standards. And I live in a major metropolitan area in Seattle, and I would say that especially in major metropolitan areas it's even more like heightened. um so just from my perspective, I come from rural Missouri where, it's very, Republican, very like conservative, which is, to each their own. But I just hadn't been in an environment where there's a lot of people like me. And so when I moved to Seattle, I noticed that shift pretty quickly. Um, and in terms of like getting in shape myself, I would say like just to preface it, I was a collegiate athlete. I was a swimmer through college, so I've always had a background in fitness. And I'm 32 now, so 10 years removed from college. And during that time frame, I kind of lost my way and gained a fair amount of weight throughout the couple of years. And that's when I reached out to you because I'm familiar with you and your brother. I swam in college with your brother, so I just seen you and saw the results that, have come from people you've worked with. And so that was kind of the impetus for me reaching out, was just wanting to get back to where I was, in terms of, fitness level. And over the course of the year plus I was with you, I was just from my own personal confidence level, I would say my confidence definitely went up a lot. Just seeing the results, and then just also the process of working out and eating healthy was just great mentally for me. And I mean, I would be lying if I said I didn't notice it like when I'm going out to like the bars and out in places where there are a lot of queer men. And I would definitely say that like I can count many times where I definitely noticed people's attitudes towards me change just based on my overall, I guess, physical appearance. And so I definitely noticed it many times, and still do to this day. So
Yeah, I mean, do you feel like, looks matter more in gay relationships than in straight ones?
I mean, I can't speak to straight relationships very much because I'm not that. But from my understanding and my having a lot of straight friends, it seems like, yeah, yes, it seems like appearances do matter a lot. And I'm not here to say whether that's something that is good in our community, that the fact that so much emphasis is put on physical appearance. I'm not here to say that I think that that's a good thing. I think in a lot of times it can be quite toxic, but nonetheless, I think that if you don't make it unhealthy for yourself in terms of like affecting your own self-confidence and getting down on yourself, there is a lot to be said about getting in good shape. It 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 can only help you, I guess, is what I'm saying. You're going to sleep better, you're going to feel better, you're going to feel more confident, and I think that, to answer your question, I think that, yeah, a lot of emphasis is put on looks, and I think, you know, we're constantly, as a community, as like a macro scale, we're constantly comparing ourselves to each other. I think, because we are
Mm,
all men, we aren't women, so, in straight relationships, you can't really relate to that as much because you aren't that. But, in this
mhm.
situation, you are a man, you know what you can look like, and you see all these other men and you compare them to yourself. So I think that kind of like amplifies it a little bit. So yes, it definitely matters a lot in a lot of circles. There are definitely people that don't care as much about looks, and there's a sect of, that community that is like that as well. But from my perspective, a lot of it is very superficial in that aspect. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, very true. Do you feel like some of that is like in the bear culture or the cub culture, and have you seen much of that?
Um, in terms of just standards and like just physical appearance, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously it's not the six pack ab thing, but it's
Mhm.
a kind of a different dating niche, I would say, in the gay community, right?
Sure. So it's funny you mentioned like those kind of subsects of like the gay community. It's something that even to me like is still kind of a little bit weird. And what I mean by that is like the gay community loves to like pigeonhole themselves or like categorize themselves. Again, this I'm speaking in generalities. This isn't the case for everyone, but a lot of people like to label themselves, whether it be like a bear or a twink or a muscle jock or like they they a lot of people love a label, and you know within that has its own standards.
Where do you feel that comes from?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I don't know that I know the answer to that. I'm sure it goes back many years. I've heard these terms for a long time. I don't necessarily know where it comes from, but I do find that like people tend to like people in their own category. And again, this isn't across the board, but I do notice that like if you would self-identify as, say, let's say a muscle jock, so like you want to get ripped, just but what you would think it is, like just six packs, giant pecs, that kind of thing. You would probably tend to be more attracted to that type as well. So I don't know if it's a product of like you're kind of like labeling yourself this because that's also what you're looking for in a partner. But yeah, I would say these standards exist across all these categories. Now, that being said, like something like a bear, I would say traditionally doesn't tend to focus as much on like having no body fat, just showing every muscle possible. It's a little more like, yeah, you can have some body fat and, maybe be a little more hairy, but regardless of the category, there is definitely like, attributes for, each of them, and they each have their own kind of standards and expectations.
Yeah, I find that so interesting that they like the gay community kind of like typecast themselves in a lot of ways. And do you feel like, and this is just coming to my mind of what I know, is that there's such a spectrum of, gay, right? Or better describe it as like a spectrum of masculine to feminine, right? That just because you're gay doesn't mean you're a super feminine man. Like I have a lot of masculine friends that are gay, right? And they actually, a lot of them prefer masculine men, right? And vice versa. So do you feel like maybe that typecast of themselves into a slot in the gay community has to do with that's kind of how they view themselves on that spectrum of masculine to feminine, or just that kind of community with like sub community within the gay community, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yes, I think that definitely is a factor. So like there is, uh, to your point, there's a full spectrum of people, and not just the gay community, but the LGBTQ plus community as a whole. Um, but yes, there's definitely a spectrum in terms of like specifically gay men where it's, hyper feminine or hyper masculine. And I think people might use those labels to like I self-identify themselves and also maybe give some kind of indication as maybe to what they're attracted to, what they're attracted to as
Yeah.
well. But I mean, across the board, like I've seen everything under the sun, very hyper feminine men interested in very hyper masculine men and, everything in between. But yes, it does seem to be, and it can be quite exhausting, just a lot of categories, a lot of labels, a lot of expectations, a lot of standards. Um, some categories more than others, but nonetheless, a lot.
Yeah. Do you think there's more bottoms than tops? That's like what I see for sure, and that's what all my gay friends
Yeah,
always say. And I have my
well,
own theory behind this, but I want to hear your thoughts
there's
first.
definitely a running joke, at least where I'm from Seattle. There's a joke that like there's no tops in Seattle. I feel like maybe a little bit of a separate discussion, but I've seen a fair amount of both. So I'm sure if we're looking at it at a macro scale, it probably equals out, but I, I don't know if there's more bottoms or tops. Like,
Yeah, you know what my theory is on this
uh-huh.
is that I think, and I think obviously more masculine gay men identify more with being tops, not always, but most of the time,
Hmm.
and more feminine obviously identify with being more of a bottom, but it's not necessarily true, but just in general. And I think because, and maybe this is not true either, but this is kind of my theory, is that because the more masculine men are the tops per se, maybe a lot of them are more closeted or they're not so openly gay. So then it's not so apparent as opposed to the bottoms, which are more of your flamboyant feminine gays that are out there and they don't care who sees it. And God bless them. I think it's great that they're doing that. But then it gives the illusion that like, oh, there's another bottom, So that's kind of my thoughts on it. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I would say if we're gonna like stereotype, yes, your original point about more masculine people tend to be tops and more feminine men tend to be more bottoms. I would say that that is probably the stereotype and generalization. Again, like I I I I err against that because I've seen everything under the sun. To your point, like someone that loves to wear a dress is a power top. Sure, good for them, but I would say that that's probably the generalization. And to your other point about just, I would say there's another like, I don't know if I would say it's an issue, but another thing that I've noticed in just gay male culture where it's like, if you tend to be very masculine or very, muscly, very male, like traditional, like straight male presenting, yeah, you might, be more of a top because that's the traditional kind of male role, if you will. And a lot of people, like, even though they are out and gay, like, they do, and I mean, myself included, sometimes struggle with, coping with being gay still. Like, it's still something, I don't care how confident you are. I'm sure there are people out there that don't have any issues at all with their sexuality, but I would be hard pressed to find, 100% of people that aren't like that. And so I think that you know, it's easy when you're very male presenting. Maybe you don't have the little lisp in your voice. Maybe you dress very masculine. You can it's kind of a camouflage in a sense because, like, okay, I'm gay, but I
Sure.
look like society expects me to look. And so, in terms of how that plays into being a top or bottom, it's easy to say you're a top because, again, that's kind of the standard male role. And, maybe like a masculine guy might be more, maybe might be more curious into dabbling with something else, like being a bottom, but maybe it's that struggle of their, struggling with their sexuality, whatever it is, that could play into effect, definitely.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, a lot of that plays into kind of, and I've talked about this with Juan and Jeff, like closeted relationships too, where some men aren't even fully comfortable identifying as gay in public, right? Have you kind of experienced some of that or seen some of that kind of in your past and what you've seen, or maybe with your friends?
Yeah, so I don't know that I don't know that I have a lot of experiences with people that are just struggling with like being out in general. I would say I've experienced people kind of what I spoke to prior that are, they're out, but they don't really want to like make it their personality or talk about it. It's more just like a, my hair is brown, my eyes are blue, like I'm gay, and like I'm not going to bring it up. I've noticed that. Maybe not so much in Seattle. I will say I live in Seattle.
Interesting.
Seattle is a very queer city. It's very, open. And so I would say I don't notice it too much here just because Seattle is a very queer city. It's very accepting of a lot of, people. It's in the LGBTQ umbrella, but yeah, I have seen people that like yes, I'm gay, but I don't really want to talk about it. Like I just want to date someone and marry someone and like start a family, and I don't need to make, every stereotypical gay thing a part of my life. So like I go to drag shows or I go to the bars and the clubs and I sleep around and I have many partners. I know a lot of people that don't do that and probably don't do it because they're struggling with their sexuality, or maybe it's just not their thing. But yeah.
Yeah, very interesting. And what do you feel like it's like for men that are growing up in rural America that are gay?
I mean, from my perspective, I was born in 1993. I'm 32 years old. I'm from rural Missouri. My family is very conservative. My immediate family accepts me, but my extended family accepts me, but it, there's things that I've noticed that, it's like they're gonna love you no matter what, but they don't probably agree with your lifestyle. It's difficult. I mean, I grew up in a time obviously before, I mean, gay marriage was legalized in 2015, I believe. So that was my junior year of college. Um, Prior to that, it was quite exhausting hiding everything about myself, especially playing a sport as well, which even though swimming, which is the sport I did, is not a quintessential like masculine sport like a football or baseball, but you know, in a sports environment with a lot of testosterone, it is quite masculine and I would say toxic. I would say it's toxic in some aspects too, from my experience. So to answer your question, it was difficult to cope with it. I went to a Catholic school. Anytime religion is involved, anytime, unfortunately, politics, maybe more on the Republican side is involved, it does get kind of uncomfortable. So you do have to put on a lot of masks. You have to watch what you say. You have to watch your mannerisms. I watched how I talk. I watched how I moved my hands. I watched words I said. I had to keep an eye on like what kind of I listened to very feminine music and I kept that under wraps. Just anything that could be seen as not standard straight male kind of um things that you would do, you're very aware of when you're in the
It's
closet.
it sounds so exhausting, and hats off to you for going through all of that and ending up where you are now. When you say like toxic for you, like how do you mean?
Yeah, I mean, I so I was this again, I was in sports from, elementary school through college. I will say all of my best friends were people on my college swim team that were men, so and women too, but so I keep that in mind. I love almost everyone that I was swimming with, but in terms of toxic, I could talk about this for a long time, but there's a lot of things that happen when you have a lot of men together that are all, especially younger, a lot of, testosterone flowing, where this kind of group think happens, where it does get a little, I would say maybe misogynistic is a word to describe it, where it's
Yeah,
like, where the men, I'm making very general comments right now, but it's like, we're men and we're so much better than girls and like doing things that are like, oh, like, talking about like women and like, like boobs or like, just even just like it's hard to think of examples like off the
yeah,
fly, but it's just a very heightened experience when you're around a lot of men around the same age. especially in athletics, where it can be a little uncomfortable,
Yeah.
if that's not your true
And I remember
personality.
too, because I grew up in rural Illinois, which is not too different. And I remember too that like gay was very like used as an insult or like condescending or some negative connotation, which when I reflect back on it now in retrospect, I'm like, I feel so much empathy for the men that were actually gay and had to hear that and go through that and then feel like a level of shame for themselves for their own sexuality, right? Which wasn't even, their choice, right? I don't believe being gay is a choice at all, right? It's like who wake up and choose to do that initially. I mean, I don't know, maybe some people, but
Hmm.
I think most gay men, it's a biological thing. Just like we don't, straight men don't choose to be attracted to women. It's just the way it is. So, and I always thought that. So to hear that, I could see, especially in a rural setting, I'm just like, man, that must be so tough. And like having to navigate, between your family and your friends and your own identity and kind of like your own confusion. For you, like, what was that process going through that? And then I guess we'll start with that. And then I'm just kind of curious as to what was like the sparking moment for you to be like, you know what, I'm just going to live my truth and come out and just like publicly be gay.
Yeah. My process was like, mm, to your point, we it just wasn't accepted. It wasn't talked about. It wasn't on TV. This delves into another rabbit hole. But when you don't see people on a day-to-day basis that are like you feel like an outcast, or you feel like you can't act a certain way. So like I'm
Yeah.
from rural Missouri, so I don't see people like in New York City that are, like a guy walking in high heels or whatever it is. Like I don't see that, so I don't have that in my brain that that's an option. So even if I like was, 10 years old, like walking in my mom's closet and like putting on a dress because why not? Um, I never thought that I would be that anyone around me was doing the same thing as I was, nor did I think I ever could be like that. And this is a time, I'm also in a time where social media isn't really a thing, so I don't get to see it through social media either. So I guess to go back to the point, it's you if you don't see it, if there are not people in your life that are like that, if you're not seeing it on TV, if you're not seeing it on commercials, if you're not seeing it at school, you don't think that that's a viable option to act. So the only way to act is to protect yourself, and that is to just try to act normal. So, you know, which in this case is straight. So, play sports, you know, date girls, like wear masculine clothes, like don't try to lower your voice, don't try to like, be very animated when you talk, like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it just gets to a point where I mean, I was closeted through college, even in college with, like I said prior, all of my best friends are from college. Even then, I couldn't. I think probably halfway through college, I had accepted that I was gay, but was going to keep it under wraps because, again, I just thought there'd be too many problems like going through life, like people rejecting me, losing friends, getting physically hurt by someone. But after it just gets to a point where it's almost like you're holding it in so long you just can't hold it anymore. I would describe it as like holding your breath. I grew up holding my breath for 24 years, and there comes a point where you just have to exhale, otherwise you're just going to explode. And I imagine that that is probably a similar case, at least for people in my kind of age range. I feel like that is a similar kind of analogy to use, that or how they would describe it. So, I mean, how did I
Yeah.
decide to come out? I just couldn't take it anymore. Like I just couldn't. It just became so exhausting. Like imagine waking up every morning and having to act. You're essentially an actor. You're pretending to be someone else, and you can only do that for so
Yeah.
long. So,
Yeah, yeah, no, totally. And well, I've never heard it put that way, and that makes so much sense. And thanks for being so like vulnerable and transparent, because I think this is super helpful for a lot of like men out there going through the same thing, especially in these rural environments that aren't a part of these cities. And I made a post about that too. I feel like if you're experiencing that, you should absolutely move to a city that has a gay culture, because then you can actually see and feel accepted, right, and understood, and realize that like you are normal, a gay
Hmm.
man is normal, right? So for you, like, what was that point then? We were really like, okay, I can't hold my breath anymore. I'm just coming out. And like, what was that transition like for you?
I mean, for me personally, you just kind of slowly, I had essentially, I didn't physically write a list of people down, but I knew who was important to me that I needed to tell. So for me, I think, I mean, I started with all of my close friends, and it would be if I saw them in person, I would let them know, or, if they lived far away, I would call them. And so I just slowly inched away at these, people in my life that I loved and wanted them to, know. And then the last people that I told were my family, which is, um, I think it's, from my perspective, I think telling a friend maybe is a little less difficult than telling your mom and dad, just because, I never thought my parents would disown me or anything if I told them. I thought they would be fine, but which they were, but it's not only like uncomfortable, it's awkward. Like I don't want to be like going around telling people this is who I'm interested in sleeping with. It's not fun to talk about, but
No, it's not
uh,
easy by any means.
but yeah, so that's what I did. I just over the course of a few months just would chip away and call and tell people. And yeah,
What was the hardest part of that?
having to have the same discussion many times with many different people, and then having to wait while they processed what I said and responded. And I will say for
Yeah,
me,
you're kind of on the edge of your seat.
yeah, for me, I had a great experience across the board for the most part, but it is like, you don't know. I mean, you don't know. You think you're best friends with them. You don't know necessarily how they will take it, and or if they're going to look at you differently or whatever. But yeah,
Were there some people in your life that took it worse than you thought, and were there some people that took it better than you thought?
yeah. All my friends took it very well. Even a couple of friends that I would say, like, again, I never thought that they were going to be up in arms or anything, but there were a couple of friends where I thought, maybe this might be a little weird for them, and it was always a I still love you. I'm glad you could be honest with me. Those kind of responses. My parents took it not the way I expected. I was expecting just a similar response as to what I just said, and for them, it just took them a minute to kind of. They're like, it's going to take us a little bit to kind of process this, and then I believe they said something to the effect of like, "Oh, is this a phase?" Which is, really not something you want to hear when.
No.
But I understand too that it kind of comes out of left field for them too. So they're again rural Missouri. They're not used to this. So I gave them some grace. But overall, for me, it was a pretty good reception.
That's great. And how did you feel after going through all that?
I mean, it feels amazing. It feels like you can, like, to use my analogy, like I exhaled for the first time in decades, and I felt like I didn't have this giant weight on my shoulder of like pretending, and I didn't have to kind of legitimize anything that I did in my life that was not stereotypical straight male. I did not have to have that defense ready anytime I was questioned about a preference or a way I acted. I didn't have to be ready with a rebuttal to explain why I'm acting like feminine or gay or whatever. So it felt amazing.
Yeah, just be yourself and kind of realize too at the end of the day, like the construct of you care more, that construct of caring what people think more to the degree that they actually do, that you got to just be yourself and do your truth and not give a fuck, right?
Mhm.
Like I can't tell you how many times I've just been through that myself in being misidentified as gay, and I don't care. Like I don't even care, just from working in the gay community, working with gay men, all of it. And to me, you just see firsthand like how liberating it is to shed that caring of what other people's perception is of you, and realizing that the people that love you are going to accept you no matter what, and your friends that love you are going to accept you no matter what, and those are the people you want to be around, and you got to resonate with your true self in that way. So
Hmm.
I'm happy that you made it through that, and thanks for being like so transparent in all that for you. And I guess now, like, what like piece of advice would you say to younger gay men, or maybe men that haven't fully gotten to the point to go through that process and are still closeted? Like, what would your advice be to them?
Yeah, it's interesting because I've never really thought about what I would tell someone in this situation, but I think that probably the most cliche response to that is like it gets better, like, but it really is, there really is truth to that. I think that my advice would be you're in no rush, like take as long as you need. You're on your own journey, just like everyone in life is. There's no specific time you need to come out, just like there's no specific time you need to get married. It's the same thing. However, I would encourage anyone that, and I will say, most people probably, they know earlier than they think they do a lot of times and are probably in denial, like I was for years. I would just say, there's nothing wrong with you. So if you're questioning something or you're contemplating, your sexuality or whatever, like there's nothing wrong with that and there's no mistake that was made. And I would say be kind to yourself. And when you're ready, there's nothing better that you can do for your own personal well-being than to be who you are. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. Thanks for sharing that, and I hope people take that and find it. I'm sure they will find that helpful. And then, so pivoting kind of back to dating, do you feel that gay men are harder to date than straight women? And I know you don't have like as much of that personal experience yourself, or maybe you have some, like maybe you had some relationships with women, but just like from what you know, like what's your perspective on that?
So I mean, I had dated a few women through college, but that's a very small like sample size. So I don't know that I could directly compare like the difficulty of straight dating versus gay dating. However, as it relates to like beauty standards, I think just in general dating has probably gotten harder, just not gays, but in general it's gotten harder just because of social media and what you see online and unrealistic body standards. So I think in general it has, but I do think that if I were to assume, because I don't have the data, but if I were to assume, I would think that being a cis gay male is quite difficult as it relates to dating because from my perspective and who I know, in the gay community, a lot of, again, and this is not everyone, I want to be clear about that, but a lot of gay men tend to follow like, fit guys online and they see that standard. And even on like dating apps like Tinder or whatever, you see like, you know, you might scroll and see the hottest guy you've ever seen. And so you look at that as a viable option. And, you know, because of all that, when you go into dating someone, you might think, oh, I can do better. Oh, I can do better because I've seen this type of person online. So, oh, they might not have chiseled abs. So, oh, I need to move on because I know I can do better because I've seen that online. And so, yes, I think it's very difficult to date, especially because of those unrealistic body standards. And also because of I think monogamy is also something that gets questioned in the gay community a lot. A lot of people are in open relationships, and that makes things very messy as well. Again, I'm not bashing monogamy or non-monogamy at all. I just think that it does muddy the waters in terms of dating, somewhat at least.
Yeah. Do you think it's monogamy is realistic for gay men?
I mean, I think it depends on the person. I know plenty of people that are in non-monogamous relationships. I know people that are in polyamorous relationships. I know people that are in very strict monogamous relationships. And I guess it just depends on the type of person you are and like how comfortable and communicative you are with your partner and like having those discussions. Um, I I can't sit here and say that non-monogamy isn't a viable option. I think it is. I've seen it for quite a few people. I just think it requires a certain amount of communication that maybe not might not be as required with monogamy. So, but yeah,
Yeah, it's a very interesting topic because I was talking to Juan about this in the last episode, and he was basically saying that it requires like a high degree of trust and like emotional maturity in a way because as men we can compartmentalize sex a lot more than women can because it's just a different way our brain works. And in an open relationship like that, it can you can have relationships that are just sex and it's mutual for both parties, and then with the person that you actually have, the relationship with, they fulfill so many other things, and you're both on the same page about that. So in my mind, I feel like that takes that level of trust, emotional maturity that obviously probably not all men have, and there's probably a lot of jealousy issues that come up and have to be worked through. But I think it's pretty interesting that I see kind of successful relationships that do that, and I feel like I don't know. I feel like better to do that than to try to be completely monogamous and not feel aligned with it, and then lie and cheat without the wrong expectation, right?
yeah. I mean, obviously, I think all cheating is bad and can only result in bad. So I think that I mean, if you ever are in a relationship and you have thoughts of like wanting to be with someone else, you are better off having that discussion with your partner, as uncomfortable as it may be, and they might not resonate with that and might need to move on, but that is magnitudes better than going the route of cheating on them, which happens
Yeah,
all the
and
time in the gay community, and I'm sure it happens in the straight
and
community
I
too.
yeah, that does with men. I mean, men are wired to
Hmm.
biologically like spread our genes, right? It's just kind of like something that we have to be disciplined around in a committed relationship. I I guess too, like, how do you have that conversation with a partner without it sounding like you just want to date somebody else?
Yeah. That's a good question. I will like preface this by saying I have not really ever been in a non-monogamous relationship. I've been like casually dating someone and, have opened up a discussion about like, are we exclusive or not? And kind of have had that kind of discussion before. But in terms of like people I've dated, I've always been monogamous. I think that you have to, if I were to do it, um, you would need to open that up very early, I would say. I don't think probably most people discover halfway through a relationship that they don't want to be monogamous. I think that I could be completely wrong, but I think that most people probably have an idea that are the monogamy is not for them. So I think that you need to be just as you would be open, when you're starting to date someone about like whatever it is. Like I'm not comparing it to this. It's just the first thing that came to my mind. It's like, "Oh, I've been arrested before," or like I have a history of this or whatever. I think you just need to in a similar setting be
Yeah,
like, I don't
when's a
know.
good time to tell?
Yeah, maybe I don't know. Maybe I'm getting off track with that one, but it's
Well,
like,
no, you're right. You bring up a very interesting point, and that's a very interesting question. Like, do you tell somebody like, "Hey, I'm just in the past. I have a really hard time being monogamous, and I would love to have a relationship with you and have it be open, but you're
yeah.
going to be my main partner and person that I prioritize." You say that in the beginning, or do you date with like, and you kind of just let it unfold with the monogamous kind of standard, and then as you progress the relationship, maybe you're in the relationship for 5 years, and then you get to that point where you're both like, yeah, the sex is boring. You know what I mean? Like, how can we fix this?
Yeah.
I love you still. We still have emotional connection and support. We still have an intellectual chemistry and support. Our sex life, we both want to kind of explore. Maybe one party brings it up with the other, and then they give it a go. But I can't imagine that doesn't get messy. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It's very like, how does that dynamic
I
work, right?
Yeah, I would say again, as it relates to like cis gay males, and I would say that that is probably not the route to go, the latter. I think that just as like you would have a conversation about like what are your intentions with dating? Are you looking for something serious? Do you want a partner? I think that people need to like weave in that to the conversation somehow. It's like, hey, we've been dating for a month or however long it is. I think that going 5 years is very extreme in my opinion before you would have that discussion. I think that that probably alludes to like your relationship might just not be working out. But
True.
I think that it's just a normal thing that should be brought up. Like, I tend to be a serious dater. I want a partner. I eventually want to move in with someone. I want to have a family. Also, I like the novelty of sex, and I want to be very clear about that. It has nothing to do with my feelings about you. I just like the novelty of sex and like the how fun it is, and that's something that is non-negotiable for me because that is just how I am. And I think it looks maybe something like that. I don't know.
Yeah. Do you feel like men take that conversation better than women would?
I would I would imagine so. I don't I don't know, but if I were to speculate, I think that I have a lot of women friends, and I've never heard. That's not true. I know I have a couple of female friends that are in more of like an open type of situation, but for the most part, I would say my sample size experience with it is that it is probably more of a difficult conversation, and it probably has to do a lot with, to your point, like men tend to be more sexually active in general and like sex more. I think that that's probably kind of what it is. So
Yeah, I mean, I just thinking about it in my experience, I don't think women, like 95% of
yeah,
women would just be like, yeah, this guy's a fuck boy, I'm out.
yeah. I was
Like
gonna.
it's just like it's something you just could not say, and as a guy, going into relationships like that, I always hold this perspective, and a lot of my friends do as well, where it's like, because me personally, like I could go either way, right? As a guy, I've done an open relationship before. It was okay for me. Obviously, done tons of exclusive ones. Those are great as well. I want a family at some point that ideally would be exclusive, as I could imagine. So I don't know. So for me, it's about exploring like women who I'm dating and kind of being open to any experience that entails. And then as I get to know them, I know what route I want to go with them.
Yeah,
Whether that be, hey, this is a more casual thing, or I see this can be a more serious, exclusive thing, potentially leading to marriage. But as a man going into those relationships, I don't know when that happens. You know what I mean? And that can be kind of ambiguous for women and confusing. But also as a guy, like we're so visual, just like gay men, where I'm attracted to this girl, I think she's hot, and then all of a sudden she's great because she's hot, but I don't know her yet,
yeah,
And after I know her for 2 weeks, maybe I know her for 2 months, I figure it out. Been like, okay, I like you enough to sleep with you, and that's what it is, and I also have fun with you. There's some girls that like we have, or people in general, I guess, that you just have really good chemistry with, great sex with, you're really attracted to, but you just don't see them as like a partner you want to build a life with, and it's nothing personal, you know what I mean? But that's a hard conversation to have. So I think going in, you just have to be very transparent as when that happens. Sometimes it's easier said than done. I've been guilty of this in my past. I've tried to get a lot better at this, and being less confusing to women, but it's really, really tough. So I know for men, maybe that conversation comes up earlier and it's easier to have because biologically you're more aligned.
hmm
So I don't know. Have you had conversations like that before? What's that process like for you?
I I have not really. Just in terms of like the monogamy conversations, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I I would say like knowing what I know now, I would be more comfortable and proactive in like having that kind of discussion. I don't know, like to again, I don't know that it's something that's necessarily for me, like non-monogamy. Um, but I think in general, I'm getting better at communicating what I need and what I expect from a partner. So I think that in general, I'm just more equipped to have those kind of conversations because I know what happens if you aren't clear about what your expectations are. So, but no, I
Yeah.
haven't really had those conversations when I'm dating someone.
Yeah. So you're ideally like looking for a monogamous relationship.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. Again, I'm not like 100% like that. I would, I don't know. But I think, as it stands currently, I think that I would probably lean towards something like that. Yeah.
And how would you react if you started to date a guy you really liked and were leaning towards or wanting to be monogamous with, and he came to the table, the relationship was like, hey, I like the sex as a novelty, but I also really like you. Like, how do we proceed moving
No.
forward?
I mean, yeah, I mean, if I'm really, feeling a connection with a guy and they bring that up, I would like to think that I'm open or like understanding enough where I could, you know, again, it would require obviously a lot of communication, whatever that looks like, whatever your boundaries are. I think you need to really have a discussion about boundaries, and you need to have like normal check-ins and like continuously communicate. The people that I know in my life that are in that kind of bubble of non-monogamy or polyamory, that kind of realm, um, they always emphasize communication. So I think I would it would not be like an immediate like turn off for me or an immediate no. It would just require like, okay, we need to dissect this a little more. What does that mean? What does that look like for you? What are my non-negotiables, etc.
Yeah, but you'd at least be open to the conversation,
Oh yeah,
right?
I would definitely be open to the conversation.
Yeah. I feel like that goes a lot farther than most women. I say most, but I
Yeah.
think that's that's the case. Do you think men, or let's say, well, let me ask this: do you think straight men or gay men are more jealous
Oh,
of their
of their
partners
partners.
or their dating process, however it may be?
I I don't I don't I don't know the answer to that. I
Just your opinion, obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, no one's going to really know, but what's your opinion?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
could be right. There's no right or wrong answer.
I mean, I've seen jealous straight men and I've seen jealous gay men, but I mean, again, I'm in an environment around a lot of gay men all the time, and because there's so much openness, like on paper, it doesn't seem like there's as much jealousy, but I would venture to say that there's actually a lot of like jealousy and resentment, but it's just not being vocalized or communicated. So, I mean, are straight men more jealous than gay men? I can't even give a speculation, but I can just speak to my knowledge of gay men, and a lot of them might, and this is not everyone, but I would venture to say that some people that are, open or really quote unquote comfortable with their relationship probably aren't. Um, and that's just a product of not communicating or just being with the wrong person, maybe. Again, I'm just speculating. I don't know for a fact, but
Yeah, I mean it's very contextual, but I think for straight men, because women are perceived to act a certain way and be so exclusive that, and there's such a biological difference in terms of what drives women, this was what drives men, that I think a lot of straight men can be hyper jealous because they're very possessive, right? But I think gay men can be possessive as well. But I think what gay men have to their advantage is the biological similarity with men and men, so they can understand the
yeah.
desires of each party and can understand how you can compartmentalize sex. So I think it's the real transparency and communication about that,
Yeah.
and really trusting one another that they're being honest, right?
Yeah, I
Because I
would
could
definitely agree
imagine
with
like
that.
if I was in that situation and I was like, okay, this is an open relationship and this partner that I love, and I truly believe them and they prioritize me and I feel that they do love me, but then they occasionally have fun on the side and I also get to have fun on the side, but we keep it as that compartmentalized and it doesn't ever affect the priority of our partnership. I could see that working very well. Whereas in like a straight relationship and like the one open relationship that I did, it's so much harder because there's so much gray, whereas women can't perceive to compartmentalize sex like that. Most of them just aren't built like that.
Hmm.
And they're so built for that monogamous, I want this guy to provide and be my security and be my emotional support. And there's nothing wrong with any of that.
Hmm.
I'm just saying like objectively, for us. And I was telling Juan this too. I was in an open relationship, but I'd been on and off with this girl for 5 years, and she's awesome. Like, she's great. And we had to the point where she was actually very bi-curious. So she was like sleeping with women. And to me, I don't care if my girlfriend does that for whatever reason. It doesn't bother me. If they sleep with other men, I like to think I'm kind of different. Like, I could work with it
Yeah.
in the same regard. I've kind of done that in some relationships, some like girls I've dated, which is interesting. But I once felt like when I was in that open relationship that I wasn't prioritized and the girl she was seeing was.
Uh-huh.
And I got I got really petty about it. I got pretty upset because I actually felt that. And I went out and I slept with another girl, like, kind of on purpose. I know it's a little
Yeah.
toxic, but I also wanted to. But I told her beforehand, like, hey, I'm going to go do this,
Yeah.
and she got really upset. She was really pissed.
I mean,
But it was like, this is what it is, and we're testing it. But we didn't break up. Like, we worked through it.
I would say like what you just said, I have heard similar things with like gay relationships too. So they might not be as too dissimilar, like the open relationships as we think, but I, you know, I, I have heard similar situations like that. And again, I think it's like communication, whatever that looks like. If there is any kind of like jealousy or whatever like involved, I feel like it can always be solved with communication. And if it can't, then it probably just wasn't a right fit to begin with. But like, yeah,
Yep.
to your story, I know, I don't know how many times I've heard where like a similar thing where it's like, okay, these people are open, but it seems like there's jealousy going on and there's like retaliatory sex involved. And so it's like, are they open or are they just not being honest with each other? Like, what's going on here? So,
Yeah, and it's
yeah,
like, what route do you go if you're a guy, like you're in the monogamy, but you're dealing with the drawbacks of monogamy, where your sex is getting so boring, you're just like craving some novelty or doing some other
yeah.
things. But is that worth the sacrifice to just keep the peace and keep everything just like secure and comfortable, or is it possible to have that open relationship and make it work, with both parties? But are you at risk of all of the chaos that might invite into
Yeah.
your relationship where it is? So I guess you have to make that judgment for yourself. But what's funny is I've had a lot of men come on to consultation calls with me and want to get in shape and want to get abs because they're opening their relationship.
Interesting.
They're like, oh, we've been dating for a while. We're now opening our relationship. So I want to get in great shape to feel good about going and dating again. So I guess that speaks a lot to it. And kind of pivoting back to the body and whatnot, what we were talking about before.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like the body pressure and the gay community is like a toxic thing? Is it a good thing? Like, what are your feelings about it and opinions?
I think it's definitely toxic, but I can't sit here and say that like I am not mm, tend to be more attracted to people that do take care of their body, like, and so that means like a more muscly fit body. So I think it's definitely toxic. I would equate a lot of things in the gay community to like high school, like level of pettiness and toxicity, that kind of thing. Uh, yeah, I think that, I mean, in a utopian society, we wouldn't be so concerned about, if you can see your six pack or whatever. But then I push back on that a little bit because I think that there is something to be said about taking care of yourself. And, I'm not sitting here and saying you need to be like a bodybuilder. I think that you should just be happy in your own skin ultimately. I would never suggest that anyone not have that viewpoint, but for me, I think it's because maybe it has to go into like shared interests. Like for me, I've always been an athlete. I've always enjoyed like the fitness space, so that's something I prioritize. So maybe that's something that I also look for in a partner because I do prioritize that. So it's probably that and a combination of just kind of gay society as a whole. Um, just again, the
Yeah.
toxic, because we're men, we can all just get jacked and look, super fit. And that's what I'm ultimately looking for. And it kind of just spirals from there. And I think that's where it
Yeah.
gets bad.
Well, I think the best way to think about it is your own relationship with it, right? It's like, approach it in a healthy way where, getting in shape, being more fit, doing all those things. And I say this a lot in my marketing
Mm.
and when I talk about it on Instagram is that there's so many shitty things about the world and about ourselves that we can't control. We just have to accept. But being actually fit, being more functional, like we can do something about drastically, right? It's within our control. And because it's so objectively important in the gay market or community or status, whatever it is, you might as well make the most of it. You know what I mean? Because you're going to get so many other benefits besides just the vanity of it or just the pressure of that come along with it, that you will just drastically increase the quality of your life. But in that process,
Yeah.
you should have a healthy relationship with yourself about it and be compassionate on yourself. Don't be so super hard on yourself and set the standard of like, okay, I need 6-pack abs to be happy. It's like, you don't have to do that. It's like, just start with, let me just start moving, get a routine and set these little digestible steps for yourself to start feeling better and moving in that direction.
Hmm.
And create like a win-win in your mind, being like, okay, I'm getting healthier, I'm feeling better about myself. Do I need to have 6-pack? No, I can work towards that as like a marathon journey, and understand that, yeah, those pressures are going to be there, but also can motivate you to make that change to just be a better person, have a better life. And I think if you're not toxic to yourself about it because of what's projected from what you can see, because I think whatever you're looking for around the environment, you're going to find that. So if you think like, oh, it's toxic, it's this, it's that, of course you're going to find that there. But if you change the relationship with yourself about it, it's only going to serve you. It's only going to help you in the long run, instead of trying to just bury your head, call it toxic, excuse your own laziness, for lack of a better word, and then nothing changes and you're unhappy with your life in a lot of ways. Or maybe you just accept it and you're fine with it and you don't mind, and that's okay too.
Hmm.
I'm just saying, like, you can kind of just have a better, healthy relationship across the board, and that's what I think would work best for most people.
I
So
I definitely agree with that. I think that if you are happy the way you are, amazing. That's how everyone should be. Is just happy. You should be content with where you want to be. But if there's something in your life that you are unhappy with, you should do something about it and change it if that's what you want to do. But I think to your point, like, I think just getting in shape for the purpose of like being more desirable by men is probably not a good way of looking at things, because I think it's just speaking to your own insecurities, really. And I
yep.
mean, that is honestly like when I started with you, um, I think it was probably 50-50. Honestly. I think I really just wanted to get back on track with my health. But part of it was like, I want to be seen as more desirable. And I think I really had to, I go to therapy. I really have had to work through that in therapy of that's probably not the healthiest mindset to have. But if it's a byproduct and that works for you, that's great. But I think that you really need to shift your mindset to like, I'm going to be healthier and happier. I think is a better motive for wanting to get in shape. Yeah.
Yeah, and just kind of view it as like a compassionate process of a win-win, and appreciate that journey, and that leads you to better results anyway. So that's always what I try to shape people's minds in this process in that way. And it's going to be difficult, it's challenging, but doing difficult things always makes you better, you know what I mean? And not just physically, but like mentally and all these things. And I'm guilty of that too. Like when I start to get into bad habits of
Mhm.
laziness or doing something, I start to become a worse person. I
Yeah.
get more indulgent in pleasures. And banger line from ChatGPT, by the way, when I was like journaling with it,
Yeah.
said that pleasure can fill time, but it doesn't organize your soul.
Hmm.
I literally said it to me. I'm like, dude, that's so deep and that's so true. So getting in shape is one of those things, and especially if you haven't done it before or you want to like go out and embark on that personal endeavor of a marathon, definitely organizes your soul. It's so
Yeah.
hard to the root of it, where then you can project out to do so many other things. So
I definitely agree with that.
yeah, saw it with you too. So, but thanks, Connor, for joining. This was awesome. Like, thanks for being so transparent and vulnerable. I hope this is like really helpful to gay men out there, to potentially straight men out there, and taking the time to share your experiences, share your perspectives, and let's do it again sometime.
Of course. Yeah. Happy to anytime.